The moment Mason said, "You're dismissed, Natalie," I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't just a meeting, it was my execution. Cameras clicked as investors shifted in their seats. Board members avoided eye contact like I'd suddenly become invisible. My husband, the man I built this company with, sat there cool and composed, firing me in front of everyone who mattered. My name vanished from the project I created from scratch. I wanted to scream, throw something, make him feel even a fraction of what I felt. But instead, I smiled. A small, tight smile that probably looked insane. Because when someone tries to break you publicly, the smartest thing you can do is not give them a show. I gathered my notebook, stood up slowly, and walked out with my head high. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing in that silent room. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. And in that moment, I made myself a promise. He would regret this. The drive home was silent, except for the ticking sound from the dashboard clock. Every minute felt like judgment, like time itself was mocking me. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, replaying his words over and over. Mason came home later that night, acting like nothing happened. He even asked if I wanted dinner, his tone casual, almost cheerful. I studied his face carefully, not a trace of guilt, not a flicker of shame. Just calm confidence. That's when I realized this wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. Calculated. Rehearsed. And I'd been sleeping beside the man who plotted it, sharing breakfast and dreams while he prepared my downfall. He loosened his tie and poured himself whiskey, talking about his day like mine hadn't just exploded. I watched him, really watched him, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. The man I loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The next morning, he made me coffee like usual, adding cream, 2 spoons, just the way I liked it. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Betrayal has a strange taste, familiar, sweet, with something rotten underneath that you can't quite place. He started talking about new directions for the company, pretending we were still partners in this journey. I nodded, smiling faintly, hiding the storm raging behind my ribs. My hands wrapped around the warm mug, steady and calm. When people betray you so cleanly, it's not emotion that saves you. It's observation. It's patience. So I listened to his plans, his visions, his lies. I watched how he avoided certain topics, how his eyes darted away when I asked about finances. He thought I was broken. He thought I'd accepted my fate. He had no idea I was already planning my next move. Every word he spoke gave me more information. Every lie added fuel to my fire. At the office, I went to clear my desk, boxing up photos and files I'd accumulated over 5 years. I overheard whispers in the hallway. Mason was bringing in a new consultant. A woman named Vanessa. His ex. My stomach tightened, a cold not forming. Vanessa was old money, connections, the kind of woman who never had to prove herself. Her presence wasn't random. She was part of this elaborate plan. I smiled politely at the interns who looked at me with pity, grabbed my files, and left quietly. But my mind was already connecting dots Mason thought I'd never see. Why would he need his ex at the company we built together? What role did she play in my dismissal? I drove to a coffee shop and sat there for hours, going through every interaction, every strange conversation from the past 6 months. Patterns emerged. Pieces clicked into place. And slowly, a picture formed, one that made my blood run cold. I remembered when we started Reed Holdings in our tiny apartment 7 years ago. I managed the books while Mason chased investors with charm and expensive whiskey. We lived on instant noodles and dreams, working 18-hour days without complaint. I built the financial systems from scratch, teaching myself accounting software late into the night. We built an empire on late nights and shared dreams, on trust and partnership. But somewhere along the way, the dream became his ego, and I became his background. I gave him everything, my time, my expertise, my heart. And he turned that into leverage against me. I sat in my car, staring at our old apartment building across the street. The windows where we used to stay up planning our future now belonged to strangers. Just like my company. Just like my marriage. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Crying wouldn't change anything. Action would. Sorting through old archives I'd saved on my personal laptop, I noticed strange transfers, amounts that didn't match our official books. They led to shell accounts under Vanessa's name, hidden in offshore trusts and dummy corporations. I sat there at my kitchen table, laptop glowing in the dark, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. He wasn't just cruel. He was strategic, calculating, criminal. And the irony? He taught me the system he used to hide it. Every trick, every loophole, every way to move money invisibly, I learned it all from him during our early days. He showed me how to protect assets, never imagining I'd use that knowledge against him. I took screenshots of everything, organized them into folders, backed them up in 3 different places. The transfers dated back 2 years. 2 years of planning my removal. 2 years of lies whispered in the dark. My hands shook as I worked, but not from fear. From fury. That night, I joined him for dinner at our marble dining table. He bragged about new deals and future plans, his voice animated and excited. I smiled, even laughed at his jokes, playing the supportive wife he expected. He had no idea I'd found the cracks in his armor, the secrets he thought were buried forever. I used his favorite tactic against him, composure. People like Mason crumble when their audience refuses to react, when they can't feed off your pain. So I gave him nothing. I asked about Vanessa casually, watching his response. He stumbled slightly, said she was just helping with restructuring. His eye twitched, a tiny tell I'd never noticed before. I filed that away too. Everything was evidence now. Every conversation, every lie, every moment of false affection. I was building a case in my mind, piece by piece. And when I had enough, I'd strike. But not yet. Not until I was absolutely certain. I met Rachel, a corporate attorney I once hired for compliance issues. We sat in a quiet cafe on the edge of town where nobody would recognize us. When she saw the documents I'd printed, her expression shifted from curiosity to shock. "He's hiding assets," she said slowly, flipping through pages. "Significant amounts. But if you want everything back, we'll need patience. We'll need more proof." I nodded, sipping my coffee. Patience I had. I just needed direction, a roadmap through the legal maze ahead. Rachel leaned forward, her voice low. "This kind of fraud, if we can prove it, means criminal charges. Not just civil court. Prison time." The word hung in the air between us. I thought about what that meant, what I was really starting. But then I remembered his face as he dismissed me, the smirk he tried to hide. "Tell me what you need," I said. Rachel smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile that matched my own. I started collecting evidence methodically, like I was preparing the world's most important audit. Emails, transactions, contracts, everything went into encrypted folders. I labeled them under tax audits and compliance reviews, so if Mason looked at my computer, he'd see nothing suspicious. Every keystroke felt like quiet justice taking shape. Rachel warned me repeatedly, "Don't confront him yet. Don't let him know what you're doing." I wasn't planning to. I wanted him to feel safe, secure in his victory, right before the floor collapsed beneath him. I tracked his meetings, noting when he saw Vanessa. I monitored bank accounts I still had access to, watching money move in suspicious patterns. I even befriended his secretary, taking her to lunch and learning his schedule. She had no idea she was feeding me intelligence. Mason thought he'd won. He thought I was defeated, docile, disappearing quietly into the background. He had no idea I was building the cage that would trap him. Mason started taking Vanessa to company galas, the same events I once organized down to the flower arrangements. Public humiliation turned into habit for him, a pattern that felt deliberate and cruel. But what he didn't know was that every post, every photo, every smug interview he gave was another nail in his own legal coffin. I saved everything. Screenshots of them together, articles mentioning the new leadership team, quotes where he took credit for my work. Rachel told me documentation was everything. "Judges like patterns," she explained. "Show them he's systematically erasing you while enriching himself and his mistress." Because that's what Vanessa was, I realized. Not just his ex. His current affair. I'd been so focused on work, I'd missed the signs. The late nights. The distance between us. The way he stopped touching me months ago. I felt stupid for not seeing it sooner, but I pushed that feeling down. It didn't matter now. What mattered was winning. Grief turned into focus as weeks passed. I studied our contracts, financial patterns, and laws he never imagined I'd read. I wasn't the heartbroken wife anymore, crying into her pillow at night. I was the silent analyst, piecing together the empire he thought he owned. I discovered he'd transferred intellectual property I created into Vanessa's name, patents, trademarks, proprietary software I'd developed, all legally registered to her. It was brilliant, actually. If anyone looked, it seemed like she was the brain behind Reed Holdings. But I had timestamps, emails, draft documents, all proving I was the original creator. Mason had gotten sloppy in his arrogance. He'd left a trail, thinking I'd never be smart enough to follow it. That was his first mistake. His second was underestimating how much I'd learned from him. Every manipulation tactic, every legal trick, I absorbed it all. Now I'd use his own weapons against him. At a charity gala I still had tickets for, I watched Mason from across the room. His hand rested possessively on Vanessa's back, his fake smile wide and practiced. He looked untouchable, like a man who'd gotten away with everything. But I noticed small details others missed, the twitch when investors asked about missing quarterly reports, the way he avoided the word audit in conversations. Fear was blooming beneath that expensive suit. I moved through the crowd in a simple black dress, invisible and observing. Several people expressed sympathy about my departure, their voices hushed and awkward. I thanked them graciously, never breaking character. An older investor pulled me aside. "Between you and me," he whispered, "something feels off about Reed Holdings lately. The numbers don't add up." I just nodded sympathetically, but inside, my heart raced. Others were noticing. The house of cards was wobbling. I just needed one strong wind to blow it down. Hidden deep in old file archives, I found a document that made everything click, my signature, forged on transfer papers. The forgery was good, but not perfect. The capital N in Natalie was slightly wrong, the loop too wide. Proof Mason used my name illegally to move assets. I sent it to Rachel with a single message, round 1. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully, deeply, dreamlessly. The next morning felt different. Lighter. I'd spent so long drowning in betrayal that I'd forgotten what hope felt like. This document changed everything. It proved fraud, identity theft, criminal intent. Rachel called me immediately. "This is it," she said, her voice excited. "This is the smoking gun. With this, we can unravel everything." I sat on my balcony, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint the sky pink and gold. Mason was still asleep in our bed, probably dreaming about his perfect life. He had no idea the nightmare I was about to unleash. I looked at myself in the mirror that morning, really looked. I wasn't the woman who got fired anymore. I was composed, strategic, dangerous. My eyes looked different, harder, clearer, focused. I whispered to my reflection, "He thought you'd beg. You're going to make him sign instead." The woman staring back at me smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd found her power again. I got dressed carefully, choosing a navy suit that made me look professional and untouchable. I styled my hair, applied minimal makeup, studied my appearance. I looked like someone you'd trust. Someone capable. Someone you shouldn't have crossed. Mason knocked on the bathroom door, asking if I was okay. "Fine," I called out, my voice steady. "Just getting ready for a meeting." He didn't ask what meeting. He didn't care anymore. That indifference used to hurt. Now it just fueled me. I grabbed my bag and left without saying goodbye. I reached out to one of Mason's accountants, a quiet man named Peter who was easily overlooked. Over coffee at a bland corporate cafe, I asked about routine audits and compliance checks. He was nervous immediately, fidgeting with his cup. His eyes darted around the room like he expected Mason to appear. I kept my voice gentle, friendly, non-threatening. "I just want to understand the transfers," I said. "For my own records." He slipped. His hands shook as he explained how Mason had insisted on certain off-book arrangements. He didn't mean to confess, but stress made him careless. I smiled warmly, thanked him, and promised everything was just between us. He looked relieved, like he'd been carrying this weight for months. I recorded our conversation on my phone hidden in my purse. Rachel had taught me, always get evidence. Peter had just confirmed everything, given me insider testimony, handed me another piece of the puzzle. Mason's own employee had turned against him without even realizing it. Peter broke completely during our second coffee meeting a week later. He confessed how Mason moved money through dummy accounts under Vanessa's trust, using complex offshore structures. He made me do it, Peter said, his voice cracking. Said it was just tax planning, but I knew it was wrong. I didn't interrupt, didn't judge, didn't push. I just listened, recorded, and documented everything. The web was tightening around Mason, each thread pulling closer. And he was still laughing in public, still posting confident updates on social media, still playing the successful CEO. I thanked Peter, squeezed his hand reassuringly. You did the right thing, I told him. He looked like he might cry. Will I lose my job? He asked. I couldn't promise anything, but I said, the truth protects good people. It wasn't quite a lie. When this was over, Peter would probably find better employment anyway. Mason's entire operation was about to crumble. Anyone associated with it would scatter like roaches when the lights came on. One night, Mason left his briefcase open in his home office. He was in the shower, singing off-key like he didn't have a care in the world. I slipped inside quietly, my heart hammering. There they were, contracts linking him directly to Vanessa's holdings, signed documents proving conspiracy. I took pictures with my phone, hands steady despite my racing pulse. No tears, no shaking, just cold efficiency. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I was gathering truth, building an unbreakable case. The documents showed Mason had planned this for over 2 years, slowly transferring assets, building Vanessa's portfolio with money and property that should have been ours. Emails discussed removing the liability, meaning me. They talked about me like I was a problem to solve, not a person. Not his wife. I heard the shower turn off and quickly left, closing the door silently behind me. Mason emerged minutes later, whistling, completely unaware I'd just found his confession in black and white. I started planting small, harmless traps. Requesting old files that didn't exist, mentioning audits casually in conversation, asking questions about accounts I knew were hidden. Mason panicked subtly at first, then more obviously. He fired 2 staff members without explanation, rewrote financial statements, held emergency meetings with Vanessa. Every overreaction gave Rachel more ammunition in court, more proof of guilt and consciousness of wrongdoing. He thought he was fixing problems, covering tracks, protecting himself. He was digging his grave deeper. Rachel explained, guilty people can't help but react. Innocent people don't panic at routine questions. So I kept asking, kept probing, kept watching him squirm. Vanessa started looking stressed too, her perfect composure cracking at the edges. She snapped at assistants. She avoided eye contact in public. They were both feeling the pressure now, sensing something was wrong but not sure what. I was a ghost haunting their guilty consciences, invisible but everywhere. And the best part? Mason still thought I was just his sad, defeated ex-wife. The day Mason got served with legal papers, he stormed into my apartment building. I'd moved out 2 weeks prior. He was shouting in the lobby, demanding to see me. Security called up, and I told them to let him come. He burst through my door, face red with rage, waving documents. You think you're smarter than me? He yelled. You think you can win? I didn't flinch. I was sitting on my couch, coffee in hand, completely calm. I looked up at him slowly, this man I'd once loved, and smiled. No, I said quietly. I know I am. He froze. The words hit him like a physical blow. That silence stretched between us, heavy with realization. For the first time, he saw me clearly. Not the background wife, not the dismissed employee, but the woman who'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time. His jaw clenched, his hands trembled. You'll regret this, he spat. I just took another sip of coffee. I already regret marrying you, I replied. He left, slamming my door so hard a picture fell off the wall. The conference room was cold, sterile, intimidating. Rachel laid the evidence out methodically like she was teaching a class, emails showing conspiracy, forged signatures, account trails proving fraud. She presented each piece calmly, connecting dots Mason thought were scattered. Mason's face drained of color as the mediator reviewed documents. His lawyer kept whispering urgently, but Mason barely responded. He looked broken, finally understanding how thoroughly I'd outmaneuvered him. Vanessa sat beside him, her designer outfit suddenly seeming like a costume. She looked at me once with pure hatred. I stared back emotionlessly. The mediator cleared his throat. Based on this evidence, all hidden assets revert to Mrs. Reed. Additionally, fraud charges may be filed. Mason's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. But he signed. Page after page, his signature admitting defeat. Just like I knew he would. Because the alternative was prison. When it was over, I stood, collected my copies, and walked out. Rachel followed, barely containing her smile. "Congratulations," she whispered. I just nodded. It wasn't about celebration. It was about justice. The story hit the press within hours. Someone leaked it, maybe Peter, maybe another employee, maybe karma itself. Investors fled, pulling millions from Reed Holdings overnight. The company's stock crashed 40% in a single day. Mason's name became synonymous with fraud in business circles. Articles appeared, CEO hides fortune in ex-lover's name, wife exposes husband's corporate fraud, Reed Holdings scandal deepens. I didn't post a thing on social media, didn't give interviews, didn't comment. Silence was the loudest victory. Every journalist who called was politely declined. My lawyer released a brief statement. Mrs. Reed is grateful for the legal system's support and looks forward to rebuilding. That was it. Meanwhile, Mason's face was everywhere, newspapers, websites, television. The golden boy brought down by his own greed. Vanessa disappeared completely, deleted her social media, reportedly fled to Europe. I sat in my apartment watching the news coverage, feeling strangely empty. This should feel better, I thought. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being betrayed. Just tired. Mason's empire collapsed spectacularly over the next month. Vanessa vanished. Rumors said she fled to avoid criminal charges. His mansion went up for sale, luxury cars repossessed, club memberships revoked. Reporters camped at his gate, shouting questions he wouldn't answer. Rachel called with final confirmation. Full legal ownership of Reed Holdings transferred to me, along with all assets previously hidden. The judge had ruled decisively in my favor. Everything Mason tried to steal was mine again. Plus damages. Plus his reputation in ruins. I didn't celebrate, didn't throw a party, didn't gloat. I just exhaled deeply, a breath I'd been holding for months. Justice had its own quiet sound, not triumphant trumpets, but a soft click, like a lock finally opening. I poured myself wine, sat on my balcony, watched the city lights twinkle below. Somewhere out there, Mason was realizing what he'd lost. Not just money or property, but the woman who truly built his success. And that loss was permanent, irreversible, complete. I visited the Reed Holdings office for the first time since being fired. It was strange walking through those doors again, past security who now called me ma'am with respect. The space felt empty, cold, echoing with departed employees. Mason's nameplate was already gone, his office cleared out. I stood in the boardroom where he dismissed me, remembering the cameras, the humiliation, the crushing weight of betrayal. It felt like years ago, not months. I made a decision then. I didn't want this company anymore. It was tainted with memories I didn't want to carry. So I donated the entire operation to a foundation supporting women in business, women who'd been pushed out, dismissed, underestimated like I was. The place that once broke me would now build others. Rachel thought I was crazy. "You're walking away from millions," she said. I shrugged. "I'm walking toward freedom." The money I'd recovered was more than enough. This wasn't about wealth anymore. It was about closure. About transformation. About turning pain into purpose. I wrote Mason a letter that night, not to send, but to free myself. "You underestimated the woman who built you," I wrote carefully. "You mistook silence for surrender, patience for weakness, composure for defeat. You taught me everything about business, but nothing about character. You gave me your worst, and I responded with my best. I hope you learn from this. I hope you become better. But mostly, I hope you understand you didn't break me. You refined me. I read it over several times, feeling emotions rise and fall. Then I folded it carefully, locked it in a drawer, and smiled. Closure isn't hearing sorry. It's knowing you don't need it. It's understanding that someone's inability to value you doesn't determine your worth. Mason would live with his choices, his consequences, his regrets. I would live with my truth, my strength, my victory. And that was the real difference between us. He lived for appearance. I lived for authenticity. He couldn't destroy what he never truly knew. Outside the courthouse after final proceedings, cameras flashed bright enough to blind. Reporters shouted my name, microphones thrust forward, everyone wanting a statement. I didn't stop to answer questions, didn't pause for photos, didn't give them the drama they craved. I walked straight ahead into the morning light, calm, whole, untouchable. The sun hit my face, warm and real. I heard my own words from months ago echo in my mind. He thought you'd beg. I smiled, kept walking, felt something lift off my shoulders, the weight of betrayal, of secrets, of fighting. I was free now. Completely free. He thought he buried me under paperwork. I whispered to myself, too quiet for anyone else to hear. He forgot I wrote the contracts. And that's how my story ended, not with revenge, but with freedom. Not with hatred, but with justice. Not broken, but unbreakable. The woman who walked into that courthouse wasn't the same one who got fired months ago. She was stronger, wiser, and finally, truly herself.